You're listening to the B&H Photography Podcast. For over 40 years, B&H has been the professional source for photography, video, audio, and more. For your favorite gear, news, and reviews, visit us at bnh.com or download the B&H app to your iPhone or Android device. Now here's your host, Alan Weitz.
Greetings and welcome to the B&H Photography Podcast. On today's episode, we're going to be discussing the L-Mount Alliance with experts from each of the companies that have skin in the game: Leica, Panasonic, and Sigma. But first, a thank you to Audio-Technica for supporting our show. John and I are using a couple of nifty BP40 dynamic broadcast microphones today, and we encourage you to check out all of the Audio-Technica microphones, headphones, and audio gear on the B&H website. Now, on with the show. Today, we welcome Marc Farb, the beautiful Marc Farb, I might add, who's the tech rep from Sigma. I couldn't resist it, sorry. John Kreidler, who's the product specialist from Leica, and Sean Robinson, who's the marketing specialist from Panasonic and host of the Lumix Live on YouTube. Welcome, all of you.
Thanks. Great to be here.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Okay, before we get into the nuts, bolts, and specs of the L-mount lenses and gear in the second half of today's show, let's start with offering our listeners a little bit of a timeline in terms of when the L-mount Alliance was announced and some of the backstory on how it came to be. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Leica was the initiator of this program, or was Panasonic part of the plan initially? And I ask that because I know that Leica and Panasonic have had a really close, long-standing working relationship for quite a while. So what's the story here?
This is John Kreidler from Leica Camera USA. And Leica developed the L-mount more than 10 years ago in order to approach the mirrorless market with autofocus in mind. So previous to that, our cameras like the M camera, being a rangefinder, was manual focus. So the mount itself was designed from the beginning to accommodate both full frame as well as APS-C sensors. So the first product that we introduced in 2014 was the Leica T, and then followed that with the Leica SL in 2015 as a full frame mirrorless camera. So fast forward to Photokina 2018. This is where the vision of our three companies have come together, now offering, I believe, 8 different cameras and almost 50 lenses in the market in only 2.5 years of work. So it's really, for many photographers, an unmatched choice of solutions.
One thing I'm a little bit curious about, and you might have already answered it because you used the key word autofocus. I was wondering if the Leica R mount was ever considered early on, because that has a relatively large flange. I think it's 47 millimeter. And it was part of the R system, the reflex system from Leica.
Our approach, I believe, is that we were looking to create something that would be perfect. So we didn't want any limitations of any mount. So if we look at the actual design of the L mount being 51.6 millimeters wide, so wider than what the R or M mounts are, for a number of reasons. One is to make sure that we could accommodate a full frame sensor, but also related issues to, say, heat, and making a mount out of stainless steel was extremely important, so that we could then create really any lens that we desired, any specification that was a request from the market that would be of interest, that we feel that would fit our vision. We weren't at all limited by it. So it really was necessary to kind of start fresh.
And is this part of the idea that is future-proof?
Right. So future-proof because of the design of the lens, the fact that it is extremely sturdy, that it's made with stainless steel, that it has 4 lobes, that it really can support almost any lens style that we would care to manufacture.
Sean, you had something you wanted to jump in? Go ahead.
Yeah, and I just kind of going on what John was just saying. I think what's cool about that future proofing kind of concept is, the fact that there is this wealth of lenses that are compatible to the lens mount because of the Leica adapters for M and R, the Sigma adapter for the MC21 to put other mounts on there. It really came across from Panasonic side, when I was being briefed on the whole system, just how inclusive but forward thinking we were, kind of getting into with this whole plan. And I think Leica did an amazing job with the system leading into, when all three of our manufacturers came together to formally announce the actual release of L-Mount Alliance.
And how, like, just on your guys' level, Sean, maybe you can answer this. Did this change the way you interact? Are you guys now, I know everything's different with COVID, of course, but, are you guys interacting more on the rep level, on the product specialist level, and talking about each other's gear? Do you have to learn the other company's gear more now than you did prior? How's that going?
Well, from Panasonic side, it actually really made a lot of our activities a lot easier to do. When we launched the S5, the newest in our lineup for the L-Mount system, in a number of regions, we ran promotions for the end users, for customers that wanted to get into the system with the Sigma 45 2.8 for L-Mount. So that really made a lot more sense for people that want to look into this and maybe looking at each individual brand as, kind of a siloed or a walled off garden and saying, well, they may not offer the focal length that I'm looking for, but, Sigma does. And that would be an awesome addition for the setup. So knowing that I can easily talk to anybody out there interested in the system and say, well, you really like, you're a Leica fan. You've had M cameras and you want to get one of our cameras because you like the ergonomics. Well, you can pick up any of the Leica lenses and put it on the camera, and that you're going to get a system designed to function properly. And the same goes with any of the Sigma lenses. You have amazing lenses available out there that when someone wants to look and buy into an ecosystem, it has to encompass everything there. What is available across the board. So it's made my job a lot easier when working with the L-Mount cameras. I'm sure Marc and John may have similar experiences, I hope.
Marc?
Yeah, actually, so because of the pandemic, we were joking around before. I normally see these guys on the road pretty much everywhere I go and where they go. But because of the pandemic, I've been doing a lot of work since the beginning with the repair department and customer service. So I've been taking a lot of tech calls, doing a lot of one-on-one working with customers. And just recently, I actually reached out to the guys over at Leica to borrow an SL2 to help diagnose some things that were going on for a customer. And it's given me the opportunity to really play with the other products, get to know them better, and understand, how it all works and how it all comes together. So while I'm not necessarily out shooting commercial work or teaching certain classes because of what's going on, it's given me an opportunity to do a little bit more personal growth with the products and help customers understand what they're getting into when they buy into the ecosystem that we're offering.
Cool. John, you wanted to say something?
I'd echo a lot of what Marc and Sean have said. The interesting thing for me with this alliance, it really extends the capabilities of a lot of photographers. And the photographers that have reached out to me have had questions using Sigma lenses as well as Panasonic lenses on our cameras. And talking to them, it's great that they have these alternative lens products that would be focal lengths that Leica may not currently make, but they feel the rendering of these lenses, strikes a chord with their visual signature, how they see the world. So for me, it's been great being able to try and kind of understand where the customers are coming from. Using other products and hearing their stories about why they like certain lenses.
Yeah, John, you brought up an interesting a word, and that is rendering for lenses, and I think that's pretty important. Anybody who's at this level of photography, you are aware of the fact that different lenses render things differently. They portray the world differently. They record differently, and even we were talking about the original Leica M lenses from way back in 70 odd years ago. They render different than their current counterparts, even though they physically look the same and even have the same name in many cases. The glass and coatings change over time. The question that I have is that all three of these companies are manufacturing a common lens, so there's interchangeability here. What about the coatings? Because each company has a certain signature in rendering of coatings too. So if I was to be, say, shooting with, say, 2 or 3 different lenses from, say, Leica and Panasonic and Sigma, would I see differences as far as coatings and colorations, or is this something you kind of agreed upon? What's the answer to that one?
Well, I think each of us design lenses to render the way we want them to, and there's, we're not being complicit in any of that. The real concentration with the L-Mount Alliance is getting lenses to perform in a very similar way in terms of the physical act of focusing, the physical act of, working with each camera so that they all work in a very similar way. So if you had, say, a Sigma lens on a Leica body, or a Leica lens on a Panasonic body, or a Panasonic lens on a Sigma body, that no matter how you connected, that user experience that you would have with that camera, no matter what the lens is going to be the same. That's something we're working towards. We've had improvements along the way, but that's definitely one of the challenges. But in terms of when you look at images, similar focal lengths, same aperture, offerings with Panasonic, Leica, and Sigma, you're going to see differences in rendering, and that's, to me, the
differences in personality.
And that's the strength of the Alliance. Is it's giving photographers really like another creative voice, in terms of being able to show how they see the world, or how they want to see the world, or how they want to portray the world.
I think that's a good way of looking at it, because it's more than a price point difference here. In many ways, what all three companies are offering are a set of brushes, but the brushes are for different strokes.
So talking to that point, Alan, just to take it a little broader, like in the cinematography world, DPs kind of gravitate to certain lenses for exactly that. There's a different coloring, there's a different appearance. They may get a flaring from the way that backlighting hits the glass.
Right.
So, like, for argument's sake, Sigma, our cine lenses are the same as our, still lenses. So it's the same glass, just in different housing. So they're essentially, they're all color matched. So if a photographer wants a certain appearance, they know that they can grab a series of our lenses to get the same appearance from that series of lenses. So if they want to do something and they want it to stand out differently, not better, worse, or anything else, just differently, they know that they have a go-to, whether it's the Panasonic, the Leica, or the Sigma glass, to convey that feeling that they're looking for. So they may very well own the same lens in 3 different versions, because each one gives a different quality to their vision. And that makes their work stand out better than somebody else's, perhaps.
I own 3 24-millimeter lenses, and that's the very reason why I own 3 of them, because they each take a different type of picture. It's not the same lens. So you're dead on with that. I get that.
Sean, you want to go?
Yeah, and to kind of expand on that even further. I mean, when you look at lens design and the different targets and goals that each company is doing for their own optics. All of us have our own plan and our own direction of what we want to go for. And when it comes to Panasonic, you look at our entire S Pro series line of camera or lenses. They're specifically designed for that user that wants to jump between photography and videography, but may not necessarily want to go get separate lenses for it. So things that are, kept very forward in mind in development are like lens breathing. So, not having the actual image area change while you're shifting your focus. The different characteristics of bokeh. So understanding how to develop the different optic elements that are actually used in the lens design to control what the bokeh actually looks like. Even down into, things like focus clutch, or in our system, the ability to change a electronically focusing lens, so not a manually controlled focus system, in the sense that it's not cam controlled. Being able to go into the camera and actually change, do you want this lens to be a linear focus throw? Do you want it to have 150 degrees of focus throw or 360? All of those things go into why, each optic out there, why you may have multiples of the same focal length, because they do target vastly different users while giving, as everyone else mentioned, the different look and style that each brand brings to, our look and our feel and our color management and the way we develop the images to look as a Panasonic image or a Sigma image or a Leica image.
From each company's point of view, what do you think the primary goal, to get into this alliance was? And then maybe on the flip side, what has surprised you, when you're seeing the development?
I think I could answer that quite easily for all three of us, but it's one of those. Each brand offers different things, but the cross compatibility and the end user having the choices to go out and use tools for their passion that they don't necessarily have available to them readily. So, a Leica customer may turn around and say, you know what, I'm headed out on this once in a lifetime trip and I want to do something a little more exotic, a little different. And they could very well look at one of the Panasonic or the Sigma lenses because the choice that they're looking for may not be available in a Leica mount, and vice versa for all three of us. So it's cross compatibility. It's opening up the toolbox to a myriad of tools and being able to get to the same point using lots of choices.
And do you see people buying the cameras that are necessary to do that, though? I mean, maybe a silly question, but do you see customers saying, all right, I'm going to go buy an S1 or an FP or an SL2 now simply because it's going to give me this range of options?
It's absolutely what happens because people have an affinity for particular products. It's like when you ask somebody chocolate, vanilla, and then of course somebody throws in pistachio or strawberry. You look at a car. There's a reason there are 14 different car manufacturers because there are different needs and different wants and likes for different customers. And not to say that one is better or worse than the other, or it's just a different choice. There are commercial guys shooting things that they want a certain aesthetic that they get from the internal workings of that particular product. So while the sensor could very well be coming from the same semiconductor manufacturer, guess what? The other stuff that goes around it has a very distinct effect on the final output. The same as that using the glass. So combining them all together gives a different feel and appearance.
So yeah, what Marc was pointing out, I think is great. I mean, the goal that I know from Panasonic side has always been choice with our Micro Four Thirds development with the L mount system from day one. I mean, from the Panasonic side, we had always wanted to release a full frame camera. I mean, this was back in 2011. Yamane, our director, had always envisioned us going into full frame with it because of that choice that comes out into the industry. So seeing this kind of natural growth with a partner that we had been working with for a very long time, Leica, was really awesome to see, and kind of surprised me that it kind of took that long for us to get to that kind of point, more than just kind of the optic collaboration, that kind of thing with some of the lenses we have. But then hearing that Sigma was also joining on, and it was going to be the three of us, pushing this kind of idea that, companies can be competitors, but can still end up resulting in an end goal for the user, for the community, that puts the industry in a better position in the future, was probably like the biggest surprise I saw. And then just how everything actually works incredibly well together. That was, I think, one of the coolest things that came out of this whole thing.
Okay, we are going to take a short break, and we come back, we're going to get more into the nuts and bolts and specifics of all of the L-Mount Alliance products. Stay tuned.
We hope you're enjoying this edition of the B&H Photography Podcast. The best way to support the show is by subscribing on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. For links to gear and more information on today's guests, check out the show notes in your podcast app or visit our homepage on the B&H Explorer website and join the B&H Photography Podcast Facebook group. And now, back to the show.
Okay, we are back. Let's start getting into some of the specifics here. Let's start with Sean Robinson. What are some of the new Panasonic L-Mount products that are newer and that excite you?
Yeah, so we just recently came out, a couple of months ago, with the S5, which is our, kind of evolution of the system. So, obviously we started out with the S1, S1R, and S1H, really going after the pro market. And, to be fair, a lot of people criticized because of the size and weight of those cameras, because of what they were designed for. But the S5 came out and really shrunk the whole system down, as far as the camera body goes for our offering into the L-Mount system. And it really kind of sparked a lot of joy in people wanting to get back out and shoot with the Panasonic line, especially those that have been branching out from maybe the Micro Four Thirds system that we offer and wanted to get into it, but didn't want to necessarily go to the larger, heavier cameras that we offered up until the S5 came out. So that's probably the most exciting of the cameras that has come out within recent time. From an optics perspective, we have our 1.8 series that are coming out. So it's a bunch of primes. We'll have a 24, 35, 50, and 85. We currently have the 85 actually out on the market, and that lens has just been a joy to use. Small, compact, kind of the whole design philosophy, making that series the same exterior chassis for people that are shooting on gimbals and stuff like that. So there's a lot of really cool technology behind it. But yeah, I mean, it just kind of really goes to the S5 in my mind as the latest, greatest, I mean, from a technical perspective, but also from just a joy of shooting. I mean, tons of cool new technologies being put into it. And then aside from that, the additions that we're putting onto the cameras with the release of RAW over HDMI in right now, the S5, the S1, and the S1H. So really a cool evolution happening over the last, I'd say, 6 months from Panasonic.
And any thoughts on, let's say, perhaps a lens from one of the other companies that would be ideal for the S5? Have you thought about that idea?
I have actually. I mentioned it before about, how cool it is that we can at least from our side, we're able to openly talk about and kind of be excited about lenses from other manufacturers. Right. And
that's the best part about the whole thing.
Exactly. And pairing, the S5 with that 45 millimeter 2.8 from Sigma, that is probably one of the most fun lenses I've gone out and shot with recently, because it just embodies the, kind of original concept that Panasonic Lumix was out to get, which was a smaller, lighter, more compact, mirrorless, interchangeable lens camera system. I mean, that was from the first ever mirrorless camera that came out. That was the goal. That was our G1. And pairing that lens with the camera, so you're getting amazing optic quality, you're getting a really small, compact package that is still weather resistant and has great build quality. That's such a fun kit to go out. But then the kind of aspirational side of me has always loved shooting with the Leica glass. I mean, I have tattoos that are the Leica Panasonic collaboration lenses, the optic designs on me. And yeah, I'm crazy.
That's good crazy. I always knew there was something I liked about you, Sean. There we go.
Yeah, But what was so cool when we launched the S series down here in Austin, we had an event and we were able to get a couple of the Leica L Summicrons for to actually show and kind of just get people to understand that the lenses work together. And when it comes to the Leica stuff, I loved shooting with the 90 millimeter. So my Leica fanboy side, it was just overjoyed with the fact that I could just throw that lens on there, get that look, get that style, and just pair it up with the cameras. It's kind of like a kid in a candy store recently with this whole endeavor.
Absolutely. We had a guest on a previous episode who shoots the SL cameras, and he kind of just threw out this idea that go find an SL, the first one, get a Sigma lens, Panasonic, and he kind of just made it so clear that what a joy this system can be. And we're talking about, yes, I know a camera that now you have to buy in the used market, but at the same time, you're talking about entering into two great systems and being able to do it at an affordable price. So that's another advantage, of course, too.
Yeah, definitely.
I just want to bounce back to something that Sean mentioned and that John mentioned earlier. And we're talking about the feel of a camera. And Sean was talking about how the S5 is now smaller than the original camera, which a lot of people thought was too big. It's really funny. When I saw the original Leica S series cameras and the Leica SL and the Panasonic version of it, I looked at it and I go, this is like a squared off brick with a smaller brick on top of it. This can't be a fun Seriously, I looked at it and I go, that's going to be, I wouldn't want to pick it up. And then I did. And you know what? My hands are medium sized. There's nothing special about my hands. The cameras felt very comfortable. They worked. It actually made sense in my hands. And I said, this is one camera that's deceiving to look at. All right. Because I've handled other cameras that have kind of boxy square thing and I just don't like them. This camera worked. Both of them do. And I was kind of surprised about that. And again, it goes back to if you like the camera, you're going to use it.
That's such an important point that I think so many people miss. And we've mentioned it a couple of times here on, with the time so far, is that, getting a camera in your hand, everyone has preconceived notions of what they like and what they don't like. And from the years that I worked in retail, putting something in someone's hand, like the cameras, immediately you just see that smile or that smirk come on the face when you pick something up that you didn't think you would like.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a cool thing to see, and seeing how wide of a variety of styles there are in the L mount system is just it's so amazing. You want ultra compact and travel friendly, you got the FP and you got the FPL. You want that refined, kind of, premium, incredibly well thought out, well engineered, kind of modern style. You got your Leica cameras, and then you have the kind of utilitarian, very pragmatic cameras from Panasonic, which is how I've always kind of categorized, at least our offerings.
Okay, Marc, Sigma, you got some cameras and lenses, not just lenses. We're talking cameras too here.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned the cameras and the lenses, because since the dawn of time, Sigma's always had a camera in their product line that's been a Sigma camera. We used to have or we still do, a dedicated SA mount. More recently, what Kazuto Yamaki has done is taken the very niche SD1 and SD1 Merrill and then turned it into the FP with the L mount. So he's kind of recreated a product that is completely new and different, but still caters to the same crowd of people, if you will. But then back to the lenses, where now you're not losing anybody. I've got 78 plus lens choices to experiment and play with and be creative with. So and as we redesign and introduce some newer products, like you have the DGDN series of lenses that are utilizing stepper motors versus a hypersonic motor. An advantage to that is, traditional DSLRs are limited to generally most of the cameras in the lineup are your aperture for autofocus. So where a camera cuts autofocus if your starting aperture is above an f5.6, but you do have some premium cameras that will give you f8 as a minimum aperture. Going mirrorless and actually utilizing a stepper motor in a lens, you negate that. So now you can have a variable aperture lens with a teleconverter on there and be out at 800-900 millimeters and have autofocus in the middle of the night. So there's some real interesting things that get to play into it. The L mount has spawned and sparked a great many new optical designs specifically for mirrorless. So it's allowing for smaller, more compact designs, as the guys were talking about before. But improving on something that was already good, it just got better. And it's kind of neat to be able to see the progression of where this is all going and be able to dip into 2 other different camera bags and say, hey guys, let's go hang out, let's go play and have some fun and get creative.
Is that what you really do?
You want to be able to understand the other product. So we're all photographers here, so tell me the truth. It's if you have the opportunity to experiment and try something new and different, absolutely.
What's the longest focal length for the L mount that Sigma has?
Well, in theory, you would be able to go out to 600 millimeters. Because you've got several different lenses with a 600 millimeter focal length. If you're talking about zooms, if you're talking about a prime, 500 millimeters.
Okay, Marc, thanks. John, Leica, what are some of the newer items from the L mount that Leica has for us?
Okay, so in December we announced the SL2S, being a 24 megapixel BSI sensor camera, and it's the first camera that we've come out with backside illuminated sensor. And this camera, initially when it was announced, we also announced the first firmware update and some of those features to really cast the vision of what this camera was to be in our product line. So actually just this week, we've released the firmware version 2.0. And to me, what's exciting about it is the fact that even though we're now compatible and supported by Atomos, the Ninja 5 for video, which is very exciting for us, we've been able to incorporate features within the SL2S that would allow you, if you didn't necessarily need to or have the space to use a 5-inch monitor, you could get some of that information or some of those things on board the camera. So as an example, we have now onboard waveform, color bar generation, as well as the ability to upload personal LUTs, as well as the 2 LUTs that we've designed. So all this kind of is to say that we're putting out a camera that we're trying to make it more video-centric, as well as being a great stills camera. So for me, that's really the exciting camera. A lens that we just recently came out with is the Apo-Summicron SL to 28 millimeter. And this camera is just an incredible joy to shoot, or I should say lens is a joy to shoot. All the Apo-Summicron lenses have the same reproduction ratio, 1:5. So it does allow you to focus very closely. So at 28, I want to say it's about 9 inches that you could get away from your subject. and really a very nice three-dimensional looking image shooting wide open, and just beautiful bokeh. So again, it's a lens too that resolves far beyond the current resolutions of our sensors. So both those products for me are the top very exciting products that we've recently released.
All right, thank you. Appreciate that, John. So I know Sean answered this already, but John, can you maybe choose a, let's say, I don't know, your choice, a Leica camera or lens, and then maybe something you think really goes well from another company to match with that?
Well, it's interesting. I had a chance to shoot. I was using my SL2 with a Sigma 500 f4 EOS mount. And you want to talk about a challenge. I went down to the Conowingo Dam in trying to photograph some eagles, and it was a lot of fun. There's certain limitations, focus limitations in terms of not really having tracking, but sometimes with those limitations, it really pushes you as a photographer to figure it out. And I got some great shots and really enjoyed shooting a 500 millimeter, which, to be honest, it's been a long time since I've tried anything quite like that. But it was a lot of fun.
I think it's a good idea for anybody to go out and try using a lens like that every once in a while, because it's sobering. Yeah. It really does. It just wakes you up a little bit.
It's like, well, what happened? I thought I could focus. Oh, wait. Where did that eagle go? Yeah.
Totally. And Marc, same question to you. Obviously, Sigma's got a lot of great lenses that can go on all the cameras, but any thoughts on what you like to mix and match with?
Oh God, you know what? As a commercial shooter, it depends on the project at hand. I've got a couple of personal projects that I want to work on, and it'll combine a couple of different things. But to John's credit, again, it's putting a long lens on there and getting out there, shooting some sports. Doing some night photography with something super wide and super fast. I would have to say I'm probably the luckiest one in the group, just because I have the arsenal of things in my toolbox available to me readily. I'd love to be able to spend a little bit more time shooting the other camera bodies and to really be able to actually encourage customers to try different things and be able to push them in the right direction for what their needs are. Because again, that's one of the things that I like to do too, is I do a lot of teaching. So it's more about educating a consumer or somebody who's already into photography and say, hey, here are the things that you want to think about, especially for what you like to photograph. You might enjoy trying these products, because I think they would enhance what you're doing, not necessarily encourage, but enhance what you're doing.
Good points.
This may be a tough question to answer. This is for Marc, though. I mean, let's say somebody's just about to buy their first, or they want to buy a new camera and a new lens, and they're interested in the L mount. What would you suggest? I mean, and let's just say we're not talking about a specific discipline. They're not going to be doing sports photography, but it's a general photographer who, may have hopes for a long career. Where would you start them out?
First thing I would probably quiz them on is, what do you like to shoot, or what subject matter do you think that you want to photograph, and then kind of guide them from there. I mean, I could always
let's say street photography. Let's say it's me, and it's street photography.
Well, you definitely want something wide, and you want something short telephoto. So the 14-24 or a 14 prime would probably be the first place to start, and a 24-70 or a 24-105 to complement what that does. You're not necessarily looking at a 70-200 or a longer telephoto. Street photography, you're up close, personal, and you're in the middle of things. A good photojournalist is going to have a wide lens, basically just above the fisheye level into 24 millimeters is where those guys live. They want to be in the middle, in the mix of things. So even thinking about primes or a zoom, depending on their budget, depending on their wherewithal, what do you want to carry or not carry? So
And
there are a
Sean,
couple
what
tools
about
as
you
well.
on the same question? If you're going to kind of advise somebody who wants to get into street photography, just as an example, camera wise and lens wise.
I mean, kind of echoing what Marc was saying, something. There's so many different variables when it comes to a street photographer, right? Some people really do enjoy shooting wide angle and capturing that way. Others like the kind of the more traditional focal lengths, like 35, 50, things like that. 50 is probably a little tight, in my opinion. But for a lot of people that are getting into that, I've kind of really had a solid go-to of looking at either a 50 millimeter, if weight isn't a concern, like our 51.4, or if weight is a factor in what they're looking at trying to be as their kit. That's where that 45 millimeter Sigma has really had room to shine on the different platforms. As far as cameras go, it kind of varies. I tend to really talk a lot about our S5 in that kind of environment for people. But if someone's really looking at ultra compact and ultra small, and you don't need a viewfinder or an attached viewfinder, you have the choices there. You've got the FP or the FPL, or if you're someone who wants, a very simplified, kind of direct user experience, you've got the SL2, the SL2S. That really kind of goes to that point that, you really do have, your choice in this platform. There's an option pretty much for everybody. It's really hard now to say, this one is definitively the one that you'd want to go for that style, or really any style of photography.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's there are a lot of choices, so that's kind of why we're here talking about it. Just a quick question, Marc. Have you tried the FP with a long lens, with a telephoto lens?
I have, and it works fine. I mean, something that people need to understand and remember too is that regardless of the camera, regardless of the system, you have to understand your equipment. And there are times that I have taken cameras and products out to shoot something very different and very specific that you normally wouldn't go ahead and do that. And like John was saying, he took out his camera and put a 500 millimeter lens on there and shot something very different than what he's used to shooting. So as long as you understand the subject matter and understand what the performance expectations are supposed to be from the product that you're playing with, you can make it do things that it's not intended to do. So like one of my passions, outside of work is aviation. And there are times that I will intentionally shoot the wrong product for the wrong subject matter because I want something very specific, creative wise. And I know that my keeper rate is not going to be, 10 out of 10. I understand that I may have to practice and do this multiple times just to get what I'm looking for from the aesthetic of the products that I'm working with. So you take all that into account, and it's a creative piece. And again, I'm lucky enough to have that wherewithal. So doing panoramas, I like using a much longer focal length for a panorama, and I will do more frames. So the overlap and stitching is tighter and better. So that's also another place where all of that comes into play, and it allows me to be very creative with different tools.
Marc brings up a great point, about that, that challenging your style of shooting and using equipment that you may not be normally, in line to go with. One of the recent things that I've started doing with actually with the S1R from our line is I had it converted to a full spectrum infrared camera, and I'm starting to shoot the the old Aerochrome style of photography. through some of the lenses and adapters that I can put on there. And one of the things that you find when you start going down that path is different lenses have different characteristics in different light spectrums. So I have found that one of my go-to lenses for capturing the aerochrome style in digital is actually one of the 24 1.4 Sigma Art lenses, because it meshes really well with like R24-70, which is my normal go-to lens on the camera. So I can get results from lenses that I wouldn't necessarily just out of the box go shoot with, because I know that they're there in the system. And when you go out and you look at, companies that test and, determine what the flare characteristics are in infrared, that 24 millimeter actually performs really well. And it's a really good affordable option into the system. So now that's one of the converted versions of the 24 millimeter. So you give up a little bit on autofocusing, but there's just such cool options out there, even when you start going out of the bounds of normal photography, or quote unquote normal photography, into things like IR conversions and astrophotography and stuff like that.
Right. John?
Yeah, I was just going to add, one of the things that I really enjoy doing is when I get any lens is to test it, right? So you would shoot it as you would normally shoot it, but then shoot it in a completely different way for a different subject, and then maybe not trying to physically break the lens, but to break down how it renders, right? So you're shooting into the sun, you're trying to get it to flare. What are the flare characteristics of this lens? Maybe shooting street photography with a 90 to 280. How is that different? It's a way different experience than shooting it with a 21. So to me, I enjoy that kind of thing, and exploring what can be done and how the lens reacts in different scenarios on our cameras, because eventually someone's going to ask me that question. What happens when I shoot my 28 Apo Summicron SL lens and try to get it to flare? Why won't it flare? Well, it's pretty well sealed with light gaskets to prevent that. If you really want flare, and we can talk about your flare, would be to go with an M lens. And that's going to certainly give you that more classic, M looking flare with, beautiful bokeh and that kind of thing. So it's a lot of fun, experimenting and almost trying to break things, but not break them.
Gotcha.
Any final thoughts from any of you gentlemen about the L-mount alliance or anything that we spoke about? Going once. Twice.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Taker.
I think for everyone out there that's been hesitant to jump into the system, because we're trained up until recently to look at brands and companies as siloed products or walled off gardens. Get your hands on any of these products. Take the time, just go out and play with them. I think breaking down that original concept that companies are always, at odds with each other is what the L-mount Alliance is really fighting against. The interoperability between Leica, Sigma, and Panasonic is spectacular. And I just encourage everyone, get out there, play around with the different combinations, because as we've been saying, you may find, that kind of Goldilocks system that you've been looking for, and it's might not be in the traditional places that you would have thought up until now.
I think those are real good points. And I think it's worth mentioning that all of the products, if I'm not mistaken, that we've been talking about are on display at the B&H Superstore in Midtown Manhattan, which is open. And you can actually pick them up and hold them and look through them and talk to intelligent people about them. And that's all of the products that we're talking about. John, you had one final comment here.
Yeah, I'm just looking forward to the continued collaboration between our three companies. And, to me, the real winner is the photographers that embrace the system, and that they'll have obviously more lens choices and more ways to relate, their own personal visual signature to their photography and to show the world. So the future looks bright.
Looks good. Looks good. Marc, Sean, John, thank you for joining us today. From each of your respective companies. We're going to have links to all of the products on our landing page. So if you wanted to look further, again, all of this is on the B&H Photography website, and we'll make it a little bit easier for you to find it. A special thanks again to Audio-Technica for the use of their BP40 dynamic broadcast microphones. We do encourage you to check out all of the Audio-Technica audio gear on the B&H website. Now, if you enjoy listening to the B&H Photography podcast and you are not yet a subscriber, head on over to Spotify or wherever you snag your favorite shows and type in B&H Photography Podcast, hit enter, and boom, you'll never miss another episode. And if you're already a subscriber, leave a nice comment. The boss eats this stuff for breakfast. And remember, you can always find us on the B&H Explorer website and on the B&H Photography Podcast Facebook group page. My name is Alan Weitz, and on behalf of John Harris and Jason Tables, thank you so much for tuning in today.